A struggling black teen rushed to save a baby crawling on a busy street. When phone started recording, his heart sank, but what happened the next morning changed everything. Nathan's worn-out sneakers slapped against the hot Phoenix sidewalk as he sprinted toward the school gym. The rubber sole of his right shoe had started to peel away, flapping with each step. Sweat rolled down his face in the afternoon heat, his backpack bouncing against his tall, lanky frame. Come on, he muttered, checking his phone. 3:47 p.m. Practice started at 4 o'clock. The morning argument with his mom played over in his head as he ran. Nathan, baby, maybe it's time to think about getting a job instead, she had said, dark circles under her eyes as she buttoned her cleaning service uniform. The bills ain't getting any smaller. Mom, please. Coach says I got a real shot at a scholarship. That's worth more than any part-time job. She had sighed, adjusting her name tag that read Gloria. I know, baby. I know. But these hours they cutting at the hospital cleaning job, we gonna need something to fill that gap. The memory pushed him to run faster. His shoes might be falling apart, but his dreams weren't. Not yet. Nathan burst through the gym doors at 3:52, the familiar squeak of basketball shoes on hardwood greeting him. Other players were already running warm-up drills, their newer sneakers gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Jones, cutting it close. Coach Williams called out, but there was no real anger in his voice. He knew Nathan's situation. Sorry, Coach. Bus was running late again. Nathan dropped his bag and started changing into his practice gear. The mesh shorts had belonged to his cousin before him, the white now a dull gray from countless washes. Marcus, one of his teammates, glanced at Nathan's shoes as he laced up. Damn, bro. Those things about to give up the ghost. They still got some life in them, Nathan replied, tying the laces extra tight to keep the sole from flapping. Practice started with dribbling drills. Nathan's hands were sure and steady, the ball an extension of his body as he weaved between cones. This was where everything else fell away. The bills, the worn shoes, the weight of his mom working 2 jobs. Here, he was just a player with talent. Good control, Jones. Coach Williams called out. Keep that head up while you dribble. 2 hours later, Nathan's shirt was soaked with sweat, but he felt good. He had nailed 3 three-pointers in their scrimmage game and made a crucial assist in the final minutes that won his team the practice match. Jones, hold up a minute, Coach Williams called as the other players headed to the locker room. Nathan walked over, his right shoe making a soft flap with each step. You got real potential, son, Coach said, his eyes serious. I've got some scouts coming to our game next month. Division II schools, but they offer full rides to the right players. You keep playing like you did today, you could catch their eye. Nathan's heart jumped. For real, Coach? For real. But, Coach gestured at Nathan's shoes. You need proper equipment. Can't have you slipping during an important game. The school's got some funds for hardship cases. No, sir. Nathan cut in quickly, heat rising to his face. I appreciate it, but I'm good. He's still got some miles in them. Coach Williams studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right, but the offer stands. Now hit the showers. In the locker room, the other players were comparing plans for the weekend. My dad just got me the new PlayStation 5, Marcus was saying as he changed. Y'all should come over Saturday. Got 4 controllers. I'm down, said Jamal, pulling on a fresh Jordan t-shirt. Nathan changed quietly, keeping his eyes on his own locker. He didn't need to see their new clothes, their intact shoes, their latest gadgets. He had one goal: get that scholarship. Everything else was just noise. Walking through the school corridors after shower, Nathan passed Mr. Peterson's classroom. The math teacher was at his desk, and his eyes tracked Nathan as he walked by. Mr. Jones, Peterson called out. A moment? Nathan backtracked to the doorway. Yes, sir. I saw your last test score. A C-. Peterson's lips were pressed thin. You know, if you spend as much time on your studies as you do on basketball, I'm maintaining a B average overall, sir, Nathan replied, keeping his voice respectful despite the familiar burn in his chest. That's what I need for basketball eligibility. Eligibility is one thing. Your future is another. Have you thought about more practical career paths? Nathan's fingers tightened on his backpack strap. Yes, sir. I have. May I go? I need to catch my bus. Peterson waved him away, and Nathan walked quickly toward the exit, his right shoe flapping with each step. The afternoon sun was still brutal as he waited at the bus stop. He pulled out his phone, a 3-year-old model with a cracked screen, and opened his job search app. He had been looking, despite what he told his mom. Stockboy positions, fast food, anything that would work around his practice schedule. But nobody wanted to hire a 13-year-old, no matter how tall he was for his age. The bus was late again. Nathan sat on the hot metal bench, watching cars drive by. Mostly newer models, air conditioning making their windows fog slightly in the heat. He thought about his dad's old Chevy, now sitting useless in their driveway because they couldn't afford to fix the transmission. 3 years since the accident at the construction site, and they were still trying to find their footing. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom, working late at office cleaning job. Leftover chicken in fridge. Love you. Nathan texted back quickly. Love you too. Be safe. The bus finally arrived, hot and crowded. Nathan found a seat near the back, his reflection ghostly in the smudged window. His dad used to say he was growing like a weed, all legs and arms now at 13. He was already taller than his mom. You got your daddy's height, she would say, smiling that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And his heart, too. The bus lurched forward, and Nathan closed his eyes, feeling the vibrations through the worn seat. One day, he would buy his mom a car. One day, she wouldn't have to clean other people's offices and hospital rooms one day, but not yet. For now, there was only the next practice, the next game, the next chance to prove himself. The sun was setting over Phoenix as the bus rolled on, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks and sun-bleached buildings. Tomorrow would be another day of the same struggle, but Nathan was used to that. You couldn't get stronger without resistance, Coach always said. His right shoe flapped against the bus floor, and Nathan made a mental note to find some super glue when he got home. The sole would hold together a little longer. It had to. The bus turned onto a street, and Nathan pulled the cord for his stop. As he stood up, his reflection caught his eye again in the darkening window. Tall, lanky, determined. His father's son. The brakes squealed as the bus stopped, and Nathan stepped out into the evening heat. Tomorrow would be another day of the same battles, but tonight there was leftover chicken in the fridge and homework to do. Small victories, his mom would say. Small victories add up. Nathan walked the final blocks home, his shoes marking each step with a quiet flap against the concrete. The sound echoed in the gathering dusk, a steady rhythm like a basketball being dribbled down an empty court. One more day done, one day closer to making it. The kitchen clock read 5:45 a.m. when Nathan heard his mom's footsteps in the hallway. Earlier than usual. His stomach tightened. Early usually meant bad news. Nathan, Gloria's voice was soft but strained. You up, baby? He was already sitting on the edge of his bed, basketball tucked under his arm like a security blanket. Yeah, Mom? What's wrong? She appeared in his doorway, already in her hospital cleaning uniform. The overhead light caught the silver strands in her hair. More than there were last year, Nathan noticed. They cutting my hours at the hospital, she said, getting straight to the point. Starting next week. Down to 20 hours. Nathan's grip tightened on the basketball. How bad? About $400 less a month. Gloria leaned against the doorframe, looking more tired than usual. The office cleaning job's still solid, but it's not enough, Nathan finished. The math was already running in his head. They were barely making it with both jobs at full hours. We need to make some changes, Gloria said, straightening up. I made breakfast. Come eat while it's hot. In the kitchen, the smell of eggs and toast filled the air. Their old radio played quietly on the windowsill. Some morning show host talking about Phoenix's record-breaking heat wave. Nathan sat at their small table, the surface scratched from years of use. I can quit the team, he said quietly, staring at his plate. Get a job at McDonald's or something. Gloria set a glass of orange juice in front of him, the cheap kind from concentrate, but cold and fresh. You listen to me, Nathan Jones. You got something special with that basketball. Something that could change everything for you. Can't eat potential, Mom. No, but you can build on it. She sat across from him, her own plate untouched. We're going to figure this out. Always do. The eggs were good. Gloria had splurged on cheese, which meant she'd been planning this conversation. Nathan ate mechanically, his mind racing through options. Maybe he could find under-the-table work. Wash cars on weekends. Something. Got a meeting with your counselor today, Gloria mentioned, finally taking a bite of her own breakfast. Mrs. Rodriguez wants to talk about your schedule for next year. Nathan nodded, mouth full of toast. The counselor had been pushing him to take advanced classes, saying they'd look better for college applications. As if they could afford college without a scholarship. The morning bus was on time for once. Nathan grabbed his backpack, the strap fraying where he'd sewn it back together. His mom caught him at the door. "We gonna be okay," she said, pulling him into a hug. Even standing on her toes, she barely reached his shoulder now. "You just keep doing what you're doing. The rest gonna work itself out." "Yes, ma'am," Nathan replied, but his heart wasn't in it. The school hallways were already buzzing when he arrived. Someone had stuck a flyer on his locker. Basketball team fundraiser car wash, $20 per car. Nathan crumpled it up. They tried explaining to Coach that not everyone could bring in 20 cars worth of customers from their neighborhood. "Mr. Jones?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice came from behind him. "Ready for our meetings?" The counselor's office was small but neat, with college pennants covering one wall. Nathan sat in the worn chair across from her desk, his knees almost touching the wood. "Your teachers tell me you're maintaining the B average," Mrs. Rodriguez began, shuffling through his file. "But they think you could do better, especially in math and sciences." "I'm passing everything," Nathan said. "That's what matters for basketball." Mrs. Rodriguez looked at him over her glasses. "Basketball isn't everything, Nathan. We need to think about backup plans. Have you considered vocational programs?" "The district is excellent, Dash. I got a plan." Nathan cut in, then caught himself. "Sorry, ma'am, but I do. Coach says scouts are coming next month, and that's wonderful," she said gently. "But Division II scholarships aren't guaranteed, even with your talent." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of well-meaning advice and concerned looks. Nathan nodded in the right places, promised to think about tutoring programs, and escaped when the bell rang. His phone buzzed during third period. A text from Coach. Gym closed for maintenance. Practice canceled today. Nathan stared at the message until his screen went dark. No practice meant no chance to work on his three-point shot. No chance to impress Coach Moore before the scouts came. No chance to forget about everything else for a few hours. During lunch, he walked to the strip mall 2 blocks from school. The help wanted sign had been in the grocery store window for a week. The manager, a balding man with sweat stains under his arms, barely looked at Nathan's application. "Must be 16, he said, handing it back. "Insurance reasons. Try again in a few years, kid." Nathan wadded up the application and threw it in the first trash can he passed. The sun beat down mercilessly as he walked back to school, his right shoe still flapping despite the super glue he'd applied last night. His phone buzzed again. "Mom. Got called in to cover emergency cleaning at office job. Won't be home till late. Love you." Nathan typed back one-handed. "Love you too." Then, after a moment, "We need to talk about basketball." Her reply came quickly. "No quitting. We figured it out together," but they were running out of things to figure out. Nathan stopped walking, the heat making waves rise from the asphalt. A car horn blared somewhere on East Van Buren Street, followed by the screech of brakes. He turned toward the noise automatically. Through the heat haze, something small was moving on the street. Something that shouldn't be there. Nathan squinted. His heart stopped. A baby, wearing only a diaper, was crawling across the burning asphalt, heading straight for the middle of the busy street. Time seemed to slow down. Nathan saw everything with crystal clarity. The cars approaching from both directions, the baby's determined crawl, the total absence of any adults rushing to help. Some part of his brain registered movement on the sidewalks, people pulling out phones, starting to point. His worn-out shoe flapped against the pavement as he took his first step toward the street. All the day's worries, money, basketball, school, vanished in that moment. There was only one thing that mattered now. The baby looked up at the sound of approaching cars, tiny hands planted firmly on the scorching asphalt, completely unaware of the danger. A horn blared again, closer this time. Nathan's body was moving before his brain could fully process what he was about to do. His backpack hit the ground behind him, forgotten. The sun blazed overhead, turning the world into a furnace, but he barely felt it. He had to reach the baby before the cars did. Had to move faster than he'd ever moved on the basketball court. Had to be perfect in his timing, because there wouldn't be a second chance. The first car was already braking, tires squealing against the hot asphalt. But there were others coming, drivers who couldn't see the tiny figure in the road yet. Nathan's right shoe flapped wildly as he broke into a sprint. Everything his mother had taught him about being careful, about how the world saw young black men making sudden moves, all of it had to be ignored. There was only the baby, the cars, and the closing distance between them. Time compressed into a singular moment of pure clarity. Nathan could hear his father's voice in his head, clear as day. Sometimes you just gotta move, son. Questions come later. His worn-out shoe hit the street's edge, and Nathan launched himself forward. Every basketball drill, every sprint, every moment of training coming down to this one instant of desperate action. The world narrowed to the sound of screeching tires and blaring horns. Nathan's feet hit the asphalt hard, the heat burning through his worn soles. The baby was 5 yards away, still crawling determinedly toward the center line. "Stop! Stop!" Nathan shouted at the oncoming cars, his voice cracking. A red sedan swerved around him, the driver's angry face visible through the windshield. The baby started crying at the noise, tiny hands pressing against the burning pavement. 3 yards now. A truck horn blasted from the right, the sound so loud it made Nathan's ears ring. Come on," he muttered, pushing his legs faster. 2 yards. The baby turned toward the noise, starting to crawl away from him. No, stay there." Nathan's right shoe completely split open as he lunged forward. 1 yard. He could feel the wind from passing vehicles, hear the squeal of brakes from multiple directions. His fingers brushed the baby's onesie just as another car horn blared. The baby jerked away, crying harder now. Nathan's heart hammered against his ribs as he made a final desperate grab. "Got you." He scooped the baby up with both hands, cradling the small body against his chest. A blue SUV missed them by inches, the side mirror actually brushing Nathan's basketball shorts. The momentum carried them forward. Nathan's broken shoe slipped on the hot pavement, and he fell hard on one knee. Pain shot up his leg, but he kept the baby secure against his chest, turning his body to shield the child from any oncoming traffic. It's okay, he repeated, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to the baby or himself. The child was still crying, tiny fists balled up against Nathan's sweat-soaked t-shirt. More tires screeched around them. Nathan looked up to see cars stopped in both directions, creating a small island of safety in the middle of East Van Buren Street. The asphalt burned through his thin shorts where he knelt. Then he noticed the phones, dozens of them, held up by people on both sidewalks. Recording. His stomach dropped as he realized how this must look. "Oh God," he whispered. A tall black teenager grabbing a baby in the middle of the street. Even with witnesses, even with the obvious danger the child had been in. "My baby." A woman's voice cut through the traffic noise. "Oh my God, my baby." Nathan turned his head to see a well-dressed white woman running toward them, her face a mask of panic. His heart rate, already racing, kicked up another notch. This was the moment he'd been dreading. "Ma'am, he started to explain, but she was already there, reaching for the child. "Tommy! Oh, Tommy!" She grabbed the baby, Tommy, from Nathan's arms, crushing the child to her chest. "Oh, thank God! Thank God!" Nathan stayed on his knees, hands raised slightly, very aware of all the phones still recording. A security guard from the nearby office building was jogging toward them, one hand on his belt. "Ma'am, step away from him," the guard called out. Nathan could see the man's hand hovering near what looked like pepper spray. No, he saved him." The woman turned toward the guard, still clutching Tommy. "He saved my baby." I turned my back for 1 second in the office playground, and he crawled through a gap in the fence, and She broke down crying, and Nathan slowly got to his feet, wincing at the pain in his knee. He could feel blood trickling down his leg under his shorts. The security guard reached them, looking uncertain now. "You all right, ma'am? Should I call the police?" "I already did," someone called from the sidewalk. "They're on their way." Nathan's stomach clenched again. The police. His mom's voice echoed in his head. Keep your hands visible. Speak clearly. No sudden moves. Cars were still stopped in both directions, drivers leaning out their windows to see what was happening. The baby had stopped crying, apparently soothed by his mother's presence. What's your name? The woman asked suddenly, turning back to Nathan. Her mascara had run, leaving black tracks down her cheeks. Nathan, ma'am. Nathan Jones. Nathan Jones, she repeated, bouncing Tommy gently in her arms. You saved my son's life. You could have been killed. The security guard was talking into his radio now, but keeping his eyes on the scene. More people were gathering on the sidewalks. Nathan could hear snippets of their conversations. Did you see that? He just ran out there. Could have been a disaster. Got it all on video. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the murmur of voices. Nathan's knee throbbed, and he could feel sweat soaking through his shirt. The woman, Tommy's mother, was still looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're hurt, she said suddenly, noticing his bleeding knee. Oh God, you're hurt. Gary, get him some first aid. This last part was directed at the security guard. Ma'am, we should wait for the police, Gary replied, but he looked uncomfortable now, his hand no longer near the pepper spray. The first police car pulled up, lights flashing, but siren off now. 2 officers stepped out, taking in the scene. Stopped traffic, gathering crowd, well-dressed white woman holding a baby, tall black teenager with a bleeding knee. It's okay, Tommy's mother said quickly, stepping toward the officers. He saved my baby. This young man saved my son's life. Nathan kept his hands visible, just like his mother had taught him. The female officer approached him while her partner talked to Tommy's mother. You want to tell me what happened here? The officer asked, her tone neutral, but not hostile. Nathan told the story in short, clear sentences, just like his father had taught him before he died. No extra words, no sudden movements, just the facts. Seeing the baby, the traffic, the rescue. More sirens approached, an ambulance this time. The crowd on the sidewalks had grown larger. Nathan could see some people holding up their phones, probably live streaming now. Nathan, a familiar voice cut through the noise. He turned to see his mother pushing through the crowd, still in her hospital cleaning uniform. Someone at the scene must have recognized him and called her workplace. Mom, he said, his voice cracking slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off, and his knee really hurt now. Gloria reached him just as the paramedics were getting out of the ambulance. She took in the scene. The police, the crying woman with the baby, her son's bleeding knee, and straightened her spine. What happened? She asked, her voice steady but her hands shaking as she gripped Nathan's arm. Before Nathan could answer, Tommy's mother stepped forward, still holding her baby tightly. Your son is a hero, she said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. He saved my Tommy. He saved my baby's life. Gloria's grip on Nathan's arm tightened. He could feel her trembling. The baby was crawling across the street, Mom, Nathan explained quietly. I had to do something. The paramedics reached them then, insisting on checking both Nathan's knee and the baby for injuries. The female police officer continued taking statements from witnesses, while her partner worked on getting traffic moving again. As Nathan sat on the back of the ambulance, letting a paramedic clean and bandage his knee, he could hear people in the crowd still talking, still recording. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably messages from teammates who had seen the videos already. Tommy's mother stood nearby, speaking with the officers while a paramedic checked her baby. She kept looking over at Nathan, her expression now clearly identifiable, gratitude mixed with something that looked like determination. You did good, baby, Gloria whispered, standing next to the ambulance. You did real good. Your daddy would be proud. Nathan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. His right shoe was completely ruined now, the sole finally separated entirely from the rest. Like everything else in his life, it had been hanging by a thread, just waiting for one moment of truth to fall apart completely. But as he watched Tommy's mother hugging her baby, saw the relieved tears on her face, he knew it had been worth it. Some things were worth more than shoes, worth more than worrying about how things might look or what people might think. The sun was starting to set over Phoenix, casting long shadows across East Van Buren Street. Tomorrow would bring questions, consequences, probably more recordings, and maybe even news stories. But for now, There was just this moment. A baby safe in his mother's arms, a knee that would heal, and the knowledge that when it really mattered, Nathan Jones had moved without hesitation. His father used to say that character showed itself in split seconds, in those moments when there wasn't time to think, only to act. Sitting on the back of that ambulance, watching the last rays of sun paint the sky orange over the stopped traffic and gathered crowd, Nathan finally understood what he'd meant. The police station's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Nathan sat in the hard plastic chair, his bandaged knee throbbing. His mother sat next to him, her cleaning uniform wrinkled from the long day, while Officer Martinez typed their statement into a computer. "Just need to get this on record," Martinez said, her fingers clicking against the keyboard. "Standard procedure." The clock on the wall read 7:42 p.m. They'd been here for over an hour, going over the same details again and again. Nathan's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since lunch. "Almost done," Officer Martinez said, glancing at him. "You said the baby, Tommy Thompson, was crawling toward the center line when you first saw him?" "Yes, ma'am." Nathan had answered this question 3 times already. Right in the middle of East Van Buren, his phone buzzed again in his pocket. He'd stopped checking after the 20th message from classmates and teammates. The videos were everywhere now: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. His notifications wouldn't stop. The door opened, and Tommy's mother walked in with another officer. She'd cleaned up since the street, her mascara no longer running, but her eyes were still red. "Mrs. Thompson," Officer Martinez greeted her. "Where's Tommy?" "With his father at the hospital. Just routine checks." Mrs. Thompson's eyes locked onto Nathan. "I wanted to make sure you got my statement about what this young man did." Gloria squeezed Nathan's hand. He could feel her wedding ring. She still wore it 3 years after his father's death, pressing into his fingers. "We've got your preliminary statement," Martinez said, "but we can add anything else you want to say." Mrs. Thompson pulled up a chair across from Nathan. "I want to make it absolutely clear. Nathan Jones saved my son's life today. He put himself in danger without hesitation to save my baby." The officer typed rapidly, recording every word. Nathan stared at his ruined right shoe, the sole now completely detached. He'd have to walk out of here practically barefoot on that side. "There are videos," Mrs. Thompson continued, "from multiple angles. They show everything exactly as Nathan described it. We've seen them," Martinez confirmed. "They're consistent with all statements given." Nathan's phone buzzed again. This time Gloria pulled her own phone out and gasped softly. "Baby," she whispered, showing him the screen. "You're on the news." The local Phoenix station had picked up the story. The headline read, "Teen hero risks life to save baby in traffic." Below was a still from one of the videos, catching Nathan mid-sprint toward Tommy. "Channel 12 wants an interview," Mrs. Thompson said suddenly. "They called my office. I told them they need to speak with you directly." She looked at Gloria. "There will probably be others." Nathan's stomach twisted. He hadn't thought about cameras and interviews. He just hadn't wanted that baby to get hurt. "We can talk about that later," Gloria said firmly. "Right now, we need to get home. Nathan hasn't eaten since lunch." Officer Martinez finished typing and turned her screen around. "Just need you both to read this and sign if it's accurate. Then you can go." The statement was straightforward, just facts, times, actions taken. Nathan signed first, then his mother. Mrs. Thompson stood as they finished. "Can I have your address?" she asked Gloria. "I'd like to. I need to do something to thank you properly." "You don't need to dash," Nathan started, but Gloria was already writing their address on a slip of paper. "We're in the Pine Valley Apartments," she said. "Unit 23B. Mrs. Thompson took the paper carefully. "Thank you. You'll be hearing from me soon." The night air hit them like a wall of heat when they finally left the station. Nathan limped slightly. The bandage made it hard to bend his knee as they walked to the bus stop. "Your phone won't stop," Gloria observed as they sat on the bench. Nathan pulled it out. 47 new messages, hundreds of social media notifications. "They're all asking about the video," he said, scrolling quickly. "Coach sent like 10 messages." "You should answer him at least," Gloria suggested. "He'll be worried." Nathan typed out a quick response. "I'm okay, Coach. Just got done at police station. Everything's fine." The response came immediately. "Proud of you, son. We'll talk tomorrow." The bus ride home was strange. People kept looking at their phones, then at Nathan, then back at their phones. One girl whispered to her friend, "That's him, the guy from the video." Gloria kept her hand on Nathan's arm, like she was afraid he might disappear. They hadn't talked about what could have happened, how easily one of those cars could have hit him, how close he'd come to joining his father. Their apartment was dark when they finally got home. Gloria went straight to the kitchen, pulling out leftovers and heating them up. Nathan sat heavily on their worn couch, his knee protesting. "You need to ice that," Gloria called from the kitchen. 20 minutes on, 20 off. Nathan's phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. "Bro, you're going viral." Even ESPN picked it up. He clicked the link. Sure enough, ESPN social media had shared one of the videos, calling it True Courage in Phoenix. The view count was already over 1 million. "Mom?" Nathan called out. "I think this is getting big." Gloria came in with a plate of reheated chicken and rice, plus a bag of frozen peas for his knee. "Eat first. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." But tomorrow started coming early. Around midnight, as Nathan lay in bed trying to sleep, police sirens wailed past their building. Usually he barely noticed them anymore, just part of life in their neighborhood. But tonight, every sound made him think of screeching tires and a baby's cry. His phone lit up again. An unknown number had sent a message. "Are you the kid from the video? Local news here. Would love to talk." Nathan turned his phone face down. Through the thin walls, he could hear his mom talking quietly on the phone in her room, probably to his aunt. "Could have died, Sheila. Just like Robert." "I can't. I know he did the right thing, but..." Nathan pulled his pillow over his head, trying to block out the words. He didn't want to think about his father right now. Didn't want to think about anything except sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the baby crawling across the burning asphalt. Saw the cars coming. Felt that moment of pure certainty when nothing mattered except reaching Tommy in time. Around 2 a.m., he gave up and opened his laptop, a refurbished model his mom had bought for school last year. His social media accounts were flooded with friend requests and messages. Local news stations had tagged him in posts. Someone had even started a GoFundMe, though he hadn't asked for that. A new email popped up from Coach Williams. "Team meeting tomorrow before practice. Be there early if you can." And Nathan, "What you did today. That's what character looks like." Nathan closed the laptop and stared at his ceiling, where glow-in-the-dark stars his dad had put up years ago still faintly shined. The stars were arranged in basketball court patterns, his dad's idea of being educational and fun at the same time. Both kinds of shooting stars, Robert Jones had joked while putting them up. "Get it?" A car door slammed somewhere outside, followed by voices. Nathan got up carefully, his knees stiff now, and went to his window. News vans were parked along their street, reporters standing in groups under the streetlights. "Mom," he called out softly, knowing she was still awake. "We got company outside." Gloria appeared in his doorway, still in her day clothes. She hadn't even tried to sleep. "I see them. Don't answer if they buzz the apartment. We deal with this in the morning." But morning felt like it had already arrived in the form of those news vans and buzzing phones. The world was spinning faster now, events moving beyond Nathan's control. All because he'd done what had to be done, what anyone should have done. His ruined shoe sat in the corner of his room, the sole finally completely separated after that sprint across East Van Buren Street. Nathan stared at it in the dim light from his window. Such a small thing to mark such a big moment. "Try to sleep, baby," Gloria said softly. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Nathan nodded, but they both knew sleep wasn't coming. Not with reporters outside. Not with his phone still buzzing. Not with the memory of Tommy's tiny hands pressed against the burning asphalt still fresh in his mind. The night crept on, marked by the occasional flash of cameras outside and the constant hum of his phone. Nathan sat in his darkened room, watching the fake stars on his ceiling slowly fade as real dawn approached. Each minute brought him closer to whatever was coming next. Interviews, attention, questions he wasn't sure how to answer. But one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same after today. That single moment on East Van Buren Street had changed everything, and the ripples were still spreading outward, carrying his name and face across screens throughout Phoenix and beyond. The first rays of sun were starting to peek through his window when Nathan finally drifted off, his dreams full of screeching tires and a baby's cry, of his father's voice telling him he'd done good, of his mother's trembling hands on his arm. Tomorrow, or rather, today would bring what it would bring. For now, there was only exhaustion, and the strange feeling of knowing that somewhere in Phoenix, a baby named Tommy was sleeping safely because Nathan Jones had chosen to act without thinking about consequences. The morning sun hadn't yet burned off the night's coolness when Nathan and Gloria stepped out of their apartment building. A cluster of reporters surged forward, cameras and microphones thrust in their direction. "Nathan, how does it feel to be a hero?" "Mrs. Jones, what went through your mind when you saw the video?" "Nathan, over here, just a few questions." Gloria's hand tightened on Nathan's arm as they pushed through the crowd. "No comments," she said firmly. "We're late for school." Their neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, watched from her doorway as they passed. "Dios mío," she called out. "Nathan, you're all over Univision. My whole family saw you." The school bus stop was worse. Kids from their building had their phones out, recording as Nathan and his mom waited. Some younger ones asked for selfies, which Gloria politely declined. "He needs to get to school," she told them. "Just like all of you." Nathan's phone hadn't stopped buzzing since he'd turned it back on. Marcus had sent at least 50 messages. "Bro, you're trending #1 on Twitter. Ellen's people trying to reach you. Someone started a scholarship fund for you. Man, you gotta see these memes they're making." The bus arrived 10 minutes late. As Nathan started to board, Gloria pulled him into a tight hug. "Remember who you are," she whispered. "All this noise don't change that." The bus ride was a gauntlet of stares and whispers. Everyone had their phones out, not even trying to be subtle about recording. Nathan slumped in his seat, wishing he'd worn something better than his worn-out jeans and faded t-shirt. "Yo, Jones," someone called from the back. "You really got offered 50 grand to be on Good Morning America?" "What?" "No," Nathan replied, but his voice was drowned out by excited chatter. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Coach Williams. "Media waiting at school. Principal wants to see you first thing." Nathan's stomach dropped. He hadn't even thought about how school would handle this. The bus turned onto the school street, and Nathan saw the news vans parked along the curb. Security guards were keeping reporters behind barriers, but cameras tracked the bus as it pulled up. "Holy shit," someone whispered. "This is crazy." Assistant Principal Martinez was waiting at the bus door. "This way, Mr. Jones," he said, creating a path through the crowd. Inside the principal's office, Dr. Washington sat behind her desk, watching a news clip on her computer. Nathan recognized himself on the screen, sprinting toward Tommy. "Sit down, Nathan," she said, turning the screen off. "Quite a situation we have here." "Yes, ma'am. The media attention is unprecedented for our school." She folded her hands on her desk. "We've had requests from every major network. The governor's office called. Even sports teams want to honor you at their games." Nathan shifted in his chair. His bandaged knee throbbed. "But," Dr. Washington continued, "you're still a student here. Your education comes first. We won't let this disrupt your studies or your basketball." "Thank you," Nathan said quietly. That said, she slid a paper across her desk. "These are approved media opportunities. Local news after school today. ESPN tomorrow morning before classes. The Ellen Show wants to fly you to California next weekend." Nathan stared at the list. The numbers next to each appearance made his eyes widen. "Your mother needs to approve everything, of course," Dr. Washington added. "But Nathan, this could change things for you. For your family." The morning announcements crackled over the intercom, making them both jump slightly. "You should get to class," Dr. Washington said, standing. "I've asked your teachers to treat this as normally as possible." But normal wasn't possible. Every classroom fell silent when Nathan walked in. Teachers stumbled over their words during lessons, distracted by the constant clicks of phone cameras. In math class, Mr. Peterson actually smiled at him. "Perhaps saving babies is more practical than basketball after all," he said, but without his usual edge. By lunch, the cafeteria was buzzing with energy. Nathan's usual table was surrounded by students he'd never spoken to before. "Is it true Ellen's going to give you a car? My cousin in California saw you on the news. Can you sign my phone case?" Marcus pushed through the crowd, carrying an extra chocolate milk. Here, he said, putting it in front of Nathan. You look like you need it. The chocolate milk reminded Nathan of Tommy. Had the baby gotten checked out okay at the hospital? His phone buzzed as if answering his thought. A message from Mrs. Thompson. Tommy's fine. Just some minor scrapes. Would love to thank you properly. Please call when you can. Nathan. Coach Williams's voice cut through the cafeteria noise. My office. Now. The coach's office was small, barely fitting his desk and a few chairs. Basketballs were stacked in one corner, and team photos covered the walls. Close the door, Coach said, shuffling papers on his desk. Those scouts I mentioned? They've moved up their visit. They're coming Friday. This Friday. Nathan's heart jumped. But that's 3 days away. Yeah. Coach leaned forward. Listen, son. What you did yesterday. That shows character. The kind of character colleges look for. But we need to keep you focused. Yes, sir. The media stuff? The attention? That's all temporary. But your future? That's forever. Coach pointed to a framed jersey on his wall. My college jersey. Full ride. Changed my whole family's life. That could be you. Nathan thought about his mom's reduced hours, about their struggling budget. Could the media stuff help? With money, I mean? Coach nodded slowly. If handled right. But you need an agent for that. Someone to manage it all. Another thing they couldn't afford. Nathan's knee throbbed again, reminding him of everything that could have gone wrong yesterday. One more thing, Coach said, pulling something from under his desk. Can't have my star player wearing broken shoes. He handed Nathan a shoebox. Inside were new basketball shoes. Not the latest model, but far better than Nathan's old ones. Coach, I can't dash. Team expense. Coach cut him off. Don't worry about it. The afternoon dragged on. Every class was the same. Stares, whispers, phones recording his every move. By final period, Nathan's head was pounding. His phone had hundreds of unread messages. The Ellen Show producers had somehow gotten his number. Local businesses wanted him for advertisements. Someone claiming to be from Nike wanted to talk sponsorship. After the final bell, Nathan changed into his practice gear, including the new shoes from Coach. The gym was eerily quiet. Usually there'd be pickup games before practice. Then he heard the voices outside. Pushing open the door slightly, he saw the media crowd had grown. Reporters were setting up cameras, checking lighting, comparing notes. There he is. Someone spotted him. The crowd surged forward. Nathan let the door close, sliding down to sit on the floor. His phone buzzed again, his mom this time. You okay, baby? Need me to come get you? He stared at the message, thinking about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. The rescue. The police station. The news vans. The offers. His mom's reduced hours at work. Coach's words about college scouts. Through the gym doors, he could hear the reporters calling his name. Everyone wanted something, a quote, a picture, a piece of this moment. But all Nathan had wanted was to keep a baby from getting hurt. The sun slanted through the high gym windows, casting long shadows across the court. Somewhere in Phoenix, Tommy was safe with his family. That should be enough. That should be all that mattered. But as Nathan sat there, his new shoes still stiff on his feet, he realized it wasn't that simple anymore. Nothing was. His phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. Nathan, this is Mrs. Thompson. I know things are crazy right now, but I think I can help. My husband and I, we'd like to talk about your future. Call me when you can. Nathan read the message 3 times, his heart pounding. Through the doors, he could still hear the reporters calling his name. Each call represented an opportunity, a chance, a possible way forward. The sun continued its slow descent, painting the gym floor in strips of gold. Practice would start soon. The scouts would come Friday. The Ellen Show wanted him next weekend. Everything was moving so fast. But for now, Nathan just sat there, his new shoes squeaking against the polished floor as he shifted his weight. Tomorrow would bring more cameras, more questions, more choices to make. Tonight, though, he just needed to practice. One thing at a time, just like his dad always said. Chapter 6. Unexpected turn. The morning news crew set up their equipment in the school library before sunrise. Nathan sat stiffly in the chair they'd positioned him in, trying not to squint under the bright lights. Just be natural. The reporter, Sarah Chun, told him as a makeup artist powdered his face. Pretend we're just having a conversation? Nathan nodded, his new collar itching. The school had insisted he wear a proper button-up shirt for the interview. The one he had on was borrowed from Marcus, slightly too small across the shoulders. We're rolling in 3, 2. The cameraman held up one finger, then pointed at Sarah. I'm here with Nathan Jones, the Phoenix teenager whose dramatic rescue of a baby has captured hearts across the nation. Sarah began, turning to Nathan with a practiced smile. Nathan, take us through what happened that day. Nathan told the story again, just like he had for the police, for the local news, for everyone. Each time it felt less real, like something that had happened to someone else. And you didn't think about the danger to yourself? Sarah pressed. No time to think, Nathan replied. Just had to move. The interview continued for 20 minutes. Sarah asked about basketball, about school, about his family. Nathan kept his answers short, just like his mom had advised. One last question, Sarah said. There's been a lot of attention, offers from shows, companies reaching out. How are you handling all that? Before Nathan could answer, Dr. Washington stepped in. I'm sorry, but Nathan needs to get to class now. The crew packed up quickly, but more reporters were waiting outside the library. Dr. Washington created a path through them, leading Nathan to his first class. You did good, she said quietly. Very composed. Nathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably his mom watching the live broadcast. She wanted to be there, but couldn't miss work at the office cleaning job. Her hours had been cut at the hospital, but she still had this one. The school day was a blur of cameras and questions. Even teachers pulled out their phones when Nathan walked into class, though they tried to be subtle about it. During lunch, Marcus showed him the latest viral numbers. 2 million views on the rescue video, Marcus reported, scrolling through his phone. You're trending in like 12 countries, bro. Nathan picked at his cafeteria pizza. Any word about the scholarship fund? Up to $15,000. Marcus whistled low. People really coming through? Nathan thought about the college scouts coming tomorrow. $15,000 wouldn't cover 4 years, but it was more money than he'd ever seen in one place. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Thompson this time. Please call when you can. Important opportunity to discuss. He'd been avoiding her calls, unsure what to say. The rescue felt like it had happened months ago instead of days. Coach caught him after lunch. ESPN crews coming at 3. Want shots of you practicing? But the Scouts Dash are coming tomorrow, Coach finished. I know, but this is good publicity. Helps with recruitment. Nathan changed into his practice gear early, wanting some quiet time in the gym before the ESPN crew arrived. The new shoes coach had given him felt better after a day of breaking them in. He was halfway through his warm-up routine when the gym doors opened. A man in an expensive suit walked in, followed by 2 others carrying camera equipment. Nathan Jones? The suit extended his hand. Mark Reynolds, ESPN. Mind if we get some B-roll while you practice? For the next hour, Nathan ran drills while cameras followed his every move. They wanted specific shots. Him dribbling, shooting three-pointers, even just walking across the court looking thoughtful. You've got real presence, Mark said during a water break. Natural on camera. Ever think about sports broadcasting? Nathan shook his head, wiping sweat from his face. Just want to play ball? Well, if that changes... Mark handed him a business card. We're always looking for fresh voices. The rest of the team arrived for regular practice, but the cameras stayed. Coach ran them through their usual drills, though everyone seemed to be trying a little harder than normal. Looking good for tomorrow, Coach said quietly as Nathan took a breather. Just stay focused. After practice, Nathan checked his phone. 17 missed calls, dozens of messages. One from his mom stood out. Baby, something strange happening. Black SUV been parked outside building all afternoon. Driver taking pictures. Nathan's stomach tightened. He called her immediately. You okay, Mom? I'm fine, Gloria answered. Mrs. Rodriguez been watching them from her window. They ain't moved in hours. Want me to call the police? No. Just maybe come straight home today. Nathan agreed, gathering his things quickly. The ESPN crew was still packing up their equipment. Need a ride? Mark offered, seeing Nathan heading out. Our van's going downtown anyway. No thanks, Nathan replied, remembering his mom's warnings about stranger danger. I take the bus. The ride home was tense. Nathan kept checking his phone, expecting his mom to call about the SUV. Other passengers on the bus whispered and pointed, but he barely noticed. When the bus turned onto his street, he saw it immediately, a black Cadillac Escalade, tinted windows, parked directly across from their building. As Nathan watched, someone inside the SUV took a picture. Mrs. Rodriguez was still at her post by her window, curtain pulled slightly aside. She beckoned Nathan over as he passed. "They've been there since 2 o'clock, she reported in her heavy accent. "Very expensive car. Not from around here. Thanks for watching out," Nathan said. "My mom home?" "Si, Lego hace una hora." She peered out at the SUV again. "You want Miguel to talk to them? He knows people." "No, it's okay." Nathan didn't want Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson getting involved. Miguel had enough trouble with the law already. Gloria was waiting at their apartment door. "You see it?" "Yeah." Nathan dropped his bag inside. "Any idea who they are?" "Could be reporters. Could be lawyers. Everyone want a piece of you now." As if on cue, Nathan's phone buzzed. Mrs. Thompson again. "Nathan, please call. What's happening tomorrow could change everything. Just give me 5 minutes." Gloria read the message over his shoulder. "Maybe we should hear what she wants." "Mom, I know. We've been doing fine on our own." She sighed, looking older than her 42 years. "But maybe we don't have to anymore." Before Nathan could respond, a knock at the door made them both jump. Through the peephole, they saw a man in a suit. Not the one from the SUV, but just as well dressed. "Mr. Jones? Mrs. Jones? I represent the Thompson family. May I have a moment of your time?" Gloria looked at Nathan, questions in her eyes. He nodded slowly. When she opened the door, the man handed them each a business card. "My name is David Chun. I'm the Thompsons' family attorney, and I have a proposal that could benefit everyone involved." The sun was setting outside their window, casting long shadows across their small living room. The black SUV still sat across the street, its presence now explained, but somehow more ominous. Nathan sat on their worn couch, his mom beside him, as Mr. Chun took the only other chair. Whatever was coming next would change things. He could feel it in the air, in the way the lawyer carefully opened his briefcase, in the way his mom's hand found his and squeezed tight. The future was about to take another unexpected turn, and all because of one moment on East Van Buren Street. One split-second decision that was still rippling outward, still creating waves that would either lift them up or pull them under. Through the thin walls, they could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's television. The evening news probably running the story about Nathan again. Tomorrow, the scouts would come. But right now, in their small apartment with the sunset painting the walls gold, a man in an expensive suit was about to offer them something that would make those scouts seem less important. Nathan's phone buzzed one final time. A message from Coach. "Whatever happens, remember who you are." Gloria squeezed his hand again as Mr. Chin cleared his throat and began to speak. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the apartment buildings when the black Escalade pulled up again. Nathan watched from his window as Mrs. Thompson stepped out, wearing a crisp business suit that probably cost more than their monthly rent. "She's here," Nathan called to his mom. Gloria appeared in his doorway, already dressed for work in her cleaning uniform. Right on time. After Mr. Chin's visit last night, they'd barely slept. His words kept echoing in their heads. "Mrs. Thompson wants to offer you an opportunity. Not charity. A chance." The intercom buzzed. Nathan pressed the button. "We'll be right down." They met Mrs. Thompson in the building's small lobby. Up close, she looked different from that day on East Van Buren Street. Composed, powerful, but with the same intensity in her eyes. "Thank you for meeting so early," she said, shaking Gloria's hand. "I wanted to catch you before work. Had to switch my hospital shift anyway," Gloria replied. "Hours got cut again." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her expression tightening slightly. "That's partly what I wanted to discuss. Shall we sit?" The lobby's only seating was a worn bench by the mailboxes. Mrs. Thompson sat without hesitation, her expensive suit touching the cracked vinyl. "Mr. Chin explained our proposal?" she asked. "Some of it," Gloria said, "but we'd like to hear it from you." Mrs. Thompson pulled out a tablet, her manicured fingers tapping the screen. "I own Thompson Tech Solutions. We're one of the largest software companies in Phoenix. Currently, we have an opening for an executive administrative assistant." She turned to Gloria. The position pays $75,000 annually, plus full benefits. Medical, dental, 401k with matching. Standard hours, no weekends. Nathan heard his mom's sharp intake of breath. She was making less than $30,000 between both jobs. Why? Gloria asked quietly. Why me? Because I've done my research, Mrs. Thompson replied. You've held the same 2 jobs for 5 years. Perfect attendance. Glowing references from supervisors. You're exactly what I look for in employees. She paused, looking at Nathan. And because your son saved my baby without thinking twice about his own safety. I believe in repaying debts. It's not a debt, Nathan said quickly. Anyone would have no, Mrs. Thompson cut in. They wouldn't have. I watched all the videos. Dozens of people stood filming with their phones. Only you moved. Gloria's hands were trembling slightly. I don't have the qualifications for an executive position. You have the most important qualification, character. Mrs. Thompson's voice softened. The rest we can teach. We have a 12-week training program. You'll learn everything you need to know. She pulled out an envelope. This is the formal offer letter. Take it home. Read it carefully. Have a lawyer review it if you want. I'll cover the cost. Gloria's voice cracked. I need to think about it. Of course. Mrs. Thompson stood. Take the weekend. But Gloria, she touched Gloria's arm gently. This isn't charity. This is an investment in someone I believe will be an asset to my company. After she left, Nathan and his mom sat in silence on the lobby bench. The envelope felt heavy in Gloria's hands. Mom, Nathan finally said, You okay? Gloria wiped her eyes quickly. Just thinking about what your daddy would say. He'd say, take it. Nathan replied immediately. He always said you were meant for better things than cleaning other people's mess. The lobby door opened, and Mrs. Rodriguez came in to check her mail. She looked at their faces, then at the envelope. Good news? She asked hopefully. Gloria nodded, unable to speak. Mrs. Rodriguez crossed herself quickly. Gracias a Dios. About time something good happened to good people. Nathan's phone buzzed. Coach reminding him about the scouts coming today. Right. Basketball. Scholarships. His future. It all seemed distant suddenly, less urgent. You should get to school, Gloria said, standing. Big day with the scouts. What about you? I got some calls to make. She clutched the envelope tight. Give notice at my jobs. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. But tomorrow started coming early. Around midnight, as Nathan lay in bed trying to sleep, police sirens wailed past their building. Usually he barely noticed them anymore, just part of life in their neighborhood. But tonight, every sound made him think of screeching tires and a baby's cry. His phone lit up again. An unknown number had sent a message. Are you the kid from the video? Local news here. Would love to talk. Nathan turned his phone face down. Through the thin walls, he could hear his mom talking quietly on the phone in her room, probably to his aunt. Could have died, Sheila. Just like Robert. I can't. I know he did the right thing, but... Nathan pulled his pillow over his head, trying to block out the words. He didn't want to think about his father right now. Didn't want to think about anything except sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the baby crawling across the burning asphalt. Saw the cars coming. Felt that moment of pure certainty when nothing mattered except reaching Tommy in time. Around 2 a.m., he gave up and opened his laptop, a refurbished model his mom had bought for school last year. His social media accounts were flooded with friend requests and messages. Local news stations had tagged him in posts. Someone had even started a GoFundMe, though he hadn't asked for that. A new email popped up from Coach Williams. Team meeting tomorrow before practice. Be there early if you can. And Nathan, what you did today, that's what character looks like. Nathan closed the laptop and stared at his ceiling, where glow-in-the-dark stars his dad had put up years ago still faintly shined. The stars were arranged in basketball court patterns, his dad's idea of being educational and fun at the same time. Both kinds of shooting stars, Robert Jones had joked while putting them up. Get it? A car door slammed somewhere outside, followed by voices. Nathan got up carefully, his knees stiff now, and went to his window. News vans were parked along their street, reporters standing in groups under the streetlights. Mom, he called out softly, knowing she was still awake. We got company outside. Gloria appeared in his doorway, still in her day clothes. She hadn't even tried to sleep. I see them. Don't answer if they buzz the apartment. We deal with this in the morning. But morning felt like it had already arrived in the form of those news vans and buzzing phones. The world was spinning faster now, events moving beyond Nathan's control. All because he'd done what had to be done, what anyone should have done. His ruined shoe sat in the corner of his room. The soul finally completely separated after that sprint across East Van Buren Street. Nathan stared at it in the dim light from his window. Such a small thing to mark such a big moment. Try to sleep, baby, Gloria said softly. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Nathan nodded, but they both knew sleep wasn't coming. Not with reporters outside. Not with his phone still buzzing. Not with the memory of Tommy's tiny hands pressed against the burning asphalt still fresh in his mind. The night crept on, marked by the occasional flash of cameras outside and the constant hum of his phone. Nathan sat in his darkened room, watching the fake stars on his ceiling slowly fade as real dawn approached. Each minute brought him closer to whatever was coming next. Interviews, attention, questions he wasn't sure how to answer. But one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same after today. That single moment on East Van Buren Street had changed everything, and the ripples were still spreading outward, carrying his name and face across screens throughout Phoenix and beyond. The first rays of sun were starting to peek through his window when Nathan finally drifted off, his dreams full of screeching tires and a baby's cry, of his father's voice telling him he'd done good, of his mother's trembling hands on his arm. Tomorrow, or rather, today would bring what it would bring. For now, there was only exhaustion, and the strange feeling of knowing that somewhere in Phoenix, a baby named Tommy was sleeping safely because Nathan Jones had chosen to act without thinking about consequences. Gloria's hands shook as she pulled on her new blazer, charcoal gray, fitted perfectly with matching slacks. The price tag had made her wince, but Mrs. Thompson had insisted. Executive assistants dressed the part. "Mom," Nathan called from the kitchen. "We gotta go. Don't want to be late on your first day." First day. The words still didn't feel real. 2 weeks had passed since Mrs. Thompson's offer, but everything still felt like a dream. Nathan stood by the door in his new Phoenix prep uniform. Navy blazer with the school crest, crisp white shirt, khaki pants. No more worn-out shoes or secondhand clothes. The scholarship covered everything, including uniforms. "You look beautiful, Mom," he said as she emerged from her room. Gloria smoothed her blazer nervously. "You sure about this, baby? About changing schools?" "Coach said it's the right move." Nathan adjusted his tie, still not quite used to wearing one. "Said Phoenix Prep's basketball program is even better than ours. Plus their academics." He trailed off as a horn beeped outside. The Thompsons' driver was right on time in the sleek company car, another perk of Gloria's new job. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting in the lobby, as she had been every morning this week. "Mire, look at you both. Like magazine models." Gloria hugged her quickly. "Thank you for everything. For watching out for us all these years. A mi familia?" Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes. "You deserve this. Both of you." The company car was cool and quiet inside. Nathan watched the familiar streets of their neighborhood slide past, wondering when it would stop feeling strange to ride in such a nice vehicle. Thompson Tech Solutions, read the glass and steel building downtown. Gloria took a deep breath as they pulled up to the entrance. "You got this, Mom," Nathan said quietly. "I know, baby." She squeezed his hand. "Your school's only 10 minutes away. Call me if you need anything." "Same to you." They parted ways in the lobby. Gloria to the executive elevator, Nathan back to the car for the ride to Phoenix Prep. Both heading to new worlds, new challenges. The Phoenix Prep campus sprawled across manicure grounds, looking more like a small college than a high school. Students in identical uniforms crossed the quad, some giving Nathan curious looks as he followed the administrator toward the main office. "Your transcript is impressive," Mr. Harrison, the academic dean, said as they walked. "Especially considering your previous school's limited resources." Nathan nodded, remembering Mrs. Thompson's words during their car ride 2 weeks ago. "Phoenix Prep will open doors. Not just for basketball, but for your whole future." His new classmates were polite, but reserved. No one mentioned the viral video or the rescue, though he caught them sneaking glances during morning classes. Jones? A tall boy approached during lunch break. I'm Mike Thompson. My mom told me to look out for you. Mrs. Thompson's son. Of course. Mike gestured to a table where several other boys sat. Want to join us? We can talk basketball. Heard you're pretty good. The cafeteria was nothing like his old schools, more like a restaurant with actual chefs preparing fresh food. Nathan's lunch card was preloaded as part of his scholarship. So you're really going to play for us? One of Mike's friends asked as Nathan sat down. We could use some help. Haven't beaten ST. Mary's in 3 years. That's the plan, Nathan replied, thinking about Coach's reaction when he'd broken the news. You're ready for this, Coach had said, though his eyes were sad. This is your shot at something bigger. His phone buzzed, a text from his mom. First meeting done. Everything good so far. You okay? He texted back quickly. All good. Making friends? The afternoon brought basketball practice. The Phoenix Prep Gym was state-of-the-art, with floating wood floors and professional-grade equipment. Jones! The coach, Mr. Davidson, called him over. Show me what you got. Nathan changed into practice gear, all new, provided by the school. No more worn shoes or borrowed shorts. The team ran drills, and Nathan felt eyes on him, evaluating. But basketball was basketball. The ball felt the same, the hoop was the same height, and his instincts were just as sharp. By practice's end, he'd earned nodding approval from his new teammates. Nice work, Mike said as they changed afterward. We might actually have a chance this year. Nathan's phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. Miss you at practice, bro. But saw your mom driving that nice car. You both doing good? The company car was waiting when practice ended. As they drove back downtown to pick up his mom, Nathan watched the city pass by. Familiar streets, but seen from a different angle now, through tinted windows and air-conditioned comfort. Gloria was waiting in the lobby, talking with Mrs. Thompson. Both women smiled as Nathan approached. How was your first day? Mrs. Thompson asked. Good, Nathan replied. Mike says hi. Ah, so you met my son? She turned to Gloria. And how was the executive training? Overwhelming, Gloria admitted. But in a good way. You'll catch on quickly. I have complete faith in you both. The ride home was quiet, both Nathan and his mom processing their days. The familiar side of their apartment building looked different somehow, like a place they were visiting rather than where they belonged. Mrs. Thompson mentioned there's an opening in the company housing complex, Gloria said softly. 3 bedrooms, good security, closer to both our new places. Nathan thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, about the worn lobby bench, about the glow-in-the-dark stars his dad had put on his ceiling. We don't have to decide right away, Gloria added, seeing his expression. Inside their apartment, they both changed out of their new clothes carefully, hanging them up for tomorrow. Gloria heated leftover dinner. No more late-night cleaning shifts meant she could actually cook now. Tell me about your day, she said as they ate. Everything. Don't leave anything out. So Nathan told her about his classes, his new teammates, the cafeteria food, about Mike Thompson's friendly welcome, and the way the basketball coach had nodded approvingly at practice. And you're okay? Gloria asked. With all of it? Nathan thought about East Van Buren Street, about that moment when he'd seen Tommy crawling toward danger. One split-second choice that had changed everything. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. His phone buzzed. Coach Williams, proud of you, son. Don't forget where you came from. Later that night, Nathan stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. His new uniform hung ready for tomorrow, his school bag packed with books he'd never expected to study. Somewhere out there, a baby named Tommy was probably asleep in his crib, safe and sound. His mother was probably checking on him, just as she checked on the 2 people whose lives she decided to change. Nathan's dad used to say that life could turn on a dime, that you had to be ready to catch the opportunities when they came. Standing there in his small room, wearing new pajamas that still had their store creases, Nathan finally understood what he'd meant. Tomorrow would bring another day of new experiences, new challenges, new chances to prove himself worthy of this sudden change in fortune. But tonight, he had his mom's proud smile, his new friend's acceptance, and the knowledge that sometimes doing the right thing, without thought of reward, could open doors you never even knew existed. The glow-in-the-dark stars his dad had put up still shined faintly overhead, marking the path from who he'd been to who he was becoming. Not all change was bad, Nathan realized. Sometimes it was just the universe's way of getting you where you needed to be all along. The Phoenix Prep Gymnasium was packed. Standing room only for the championship game against St. Mary's. 3 months had passed since Nathan's first day, but sometimes it still felt like yesterday. "Ready?" Mike Thompson asked as they warmed up. The team had voted Nathan co-captain last week, alongside Mike. "Born ready," Nathan replied, sinking a three-pointer. His new jersey felt right now, the navy and gold colors as familiar as his old schools had been. In the stands, he spotted his mom sitting with Mrs. Thompson in the reserved section. Gloria wore one of her executive suits. She'd just come from leading her first solo project meeting at Thompson Tech. The nervous woman in the borrowed blazer was gone, replaced by someone who walked with confidence through the corporate world. 2 minutes, Coach Davidson called. "Bring it in." The team huddled up. Nathan looked at the faces around him. No longer strangers, but brothers in arms, they'd fought their way to this championship game together, erasing the memory of 3 years of losses to St. Mary's. "Jones, Thompson, you lead us out there," Coach said. "Just like we practiced." The crowd roared as both teams took the court. Nathan spotted his old coach, Williams, in the stands with some of his former teammates. They'd come to support him, just like they promised. The referee's whistle cut through the noise. Nathan took his position, the ball heavy and familiar in his hands. This was it, everything they'd worked for. The game started fast. St. Mary's had size advantage, but Phoenix Prep had speed, and they had Nathan. He drove the lane, made the extra pass, found teammates in rhythm. "That's it," Mike shouted as Nathan hit him with a no-look pass for an easy layup. Just like that. By halftime, they were up by 6. In the locker room, Coach Davidson kept it simple. Play your game, trust each other, finish strong. Nathan's phone had buzzed just before the game. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez, watching on live stream. "Whole building cheering for you." The second half was a battle. St. Mary's wouldn't go down easy. They clawed back, tying the game with 3 minutes left. "Timeout," Coach Davidson called. "Jones, Thompson, this is your moment." In the huddle, Nathan looked at his teammates' faces. Mike nodded slightly. They had a play for this. Something they'd practiced, but never used in a game. The whistle blew. 1 minute left, game tied. St. Mary's had the ball. Nathan's defenders sagged off, expecting a drive. But Nathan had learned patience these past months. He waited, watched, then struck. The steal was clean. The ball felt perfect in his hands as he drove down court. 2 defenders collapsed on him. Exactly what they planned for. Mike cut backdoor just like in practice. Nathan's pass floated over the defenders, right into his teammates' hands. "Yes!" Gloria's voice cut through the crowd noise as Mike laid it in. Phoenix Prep by 2, 30 seconds left. St. Mary's called timeout. Nathan caught his mom's eye in the stands. She was standing, just like everyone else, but her face was calm. She believed in him, just like she believed in herself when Mrs. Thompson offered her that chance. "Defense!" Coach Davidson shouted. "One stop." St. Mary's best shooter came off a screen. Nathan fought through it, felt the brush of his defender's jersey. The shot went up. Time seemed to slow, just like it had that day on East Van Buren Street. The ball arced toward the rim as the final buzzer sounded. Clang! The rebound landed in Mike's hands as the gym erupted. They'd done it. Phoenix Prep's first championship in 12 years. Team members mobbed each other at center court. Coach Davidson was hugging his assistants. In the stands, Gloria and Mrs. Thompson were embracing, both of them crying. "Nathan!" Mike shouted over the noise. "Look!" At the gym entrance, carried in his father's arms, was Tommy. The baby, bigger now, but still recognizable, wore a tiny Phoenix Prep jersey with Nathan's number. Mrs. Thompson made her way down to the court, Tommy reaching for Nathan as they approached. "He wanted to be here," she said, taking Tommy from her husband, "to see his hero play." Nathan touched Tommy's small hand gently. "Hey, little man, you've grown." The baby grabbed his fingers, squeezing tight. Just like he grabbed life that day on the street, unknowingly changing so many lives in the process. The celebration continued around them. Photos, interviews, trophy presentations. Nathan's old teammates came down to congratulate him. Coach Williams hugged him hard. "Told you were ready," his old coach said gruffly. Later, after the gym had cleared out, Nathan sat on the bleachers with his mom. She'd taken off her suit jacket, looking more like the mom he'd grown up with. "Your daddy would be so proud," she said softly. "Of both of us?" Nathan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. In his bag was a letter from Duke University, early acceptance, full scholarship. Mrs. Thompson's connections had helped, but his grades at Phoenix Prep had sealed the deal. "Ready to head home?" Gloria asked. Their new apartment in the company complex still didn't feel quite like home, but it was getting there. "Yeah." Nathan stood, his championship medal hanging heavy around his neck. "Think Mrs. Rodriguez is still watching the live stream?" "Probably got the whole building watching replays," Gloria laughed. "You know how she is?" They walked out together, mother and son, into the cool Phoenix night. The company car was waiting, but Nathan paused to look up at the stars. Real ones, not the plastic kind on his old ceiling. His phone buzzed one last time. A message from Mike. "Party at my house tomorrow. Mom's idea. The whole team's coming. You in?" Nathan smiled, typing back quickly. "Wouldn't miss it." The car ride home was quiet, both of them lost in thought. They passed their old neighborhood, the streets familiar but somehow distant now, like a chapter in a book you've finished reading. "You know," Gloria said suddenly, "I saw that security guard today. The one from that day? He works in our building now. Asked me to tell you hello." Nathan remembered the guard's hand hovering near his pepper spray. "Things change." "They sure do, baby." Gloria looked out at the city lights. "They sure do." At their new apartment, Nathan hung his championship medal next to his Phoenix Prep acceptance letter. Next to those was a framed photo from that day on East Van Buren Street. Not the rescue itself, but after, when Tommy's mother had hugged him in thanks. One moment, one choice, one baby crawling into traffic on a hot Phoenix day. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Thompson this time. "Thank you for giving my son someone to look up to." Both on and off the court, Nathan touched the championship medal gently. Its gold surface caught the light, shining like a star. Like hope, like possibility. Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere out there, a baby named Tommy was sleeping peacefully, unaware of how his brief adventure had changed so many lives. Somewhere, Mrs. Rodriguez was probably still showing her neighbors videos of the game. And somewhere, Nathan knew his father was watching, proud of the man his son was becoming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. College preparations. More responsibilities at school. His mom's growing role at Thompson Tech. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Nathan changed into his pajamas, silk ones, a gift from his mom to celebrate the championship. On his desk sat his Duke acceptance letter, his future waiting in black and white. Before sleep took him, he sent one last text to his mom, just like he did every night. "Love you." Her reply came instantly. "Love you too, baby. Always." The stars outside his window shone bright and clear, no plastic needed. Real stars, lighting the way forward. Just like that day on East Van Buren Street, everything had come down to a single moment of truth. And just like that day, Nathan Jones had risen to meet it, transforming not just his own life, but the lives of everyone around him. Not bad for a kid who once worried about a broken shoe. The night deepened over Phoenix, wrapping the city in quiet. In his bed, Nathan drifted off to sleep, the championship medal catching moonlight on his wall. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges and triumphs, but that was okay. After all, he learned the most important lesson any young man could learn. Sometimes the biggest moments come disguised as the smallest choices, and the bravest thing you can do is simply act when action is needed. The rest, as his father would have said, just takes care of itself.